In a handful of different videos on this channel, I've said some not so kind things about the New York Knicks. They're one of the most mismanaged, poorly owned, and delusional franchises in American sports. And despite the title of this video, that hasn't really changed. However, as I went through and evaluated what is next for the Knicks, I found myself pleasantly surprised with how promising their future could be. With RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson on the roster, some extra draft picks in their back pocket, and the always valuable cap space available for the next few off seasons, you could even almost say that the Knicks have a plan for how to build themselves into a contender moving forward. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and today's video is the start of the 2020 version of the What's Next series. This is something that I started last offseason, where I take a look at the future of every single team in the NBA and talk about where they're going, as well as give my own recommendation for what I think that they should do to continue to build their team. And yes, last year, I actually did all 30 teams. Now, in this video, I'll be covering the New York Knicks, and I'm going to do this in a few different parts while giving them some grades along the way. First, I'm going to talk about their performance last season, as well as identify some building blocks for them moving forward, some players that I think that they really should be building around. Then I'm going to talk about what they could potentially do in the draft, as well as what trade pieces they have on the roster and some trades that they could potentially make. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about some free agency stuff, whether it be this offseason or moving forward, in terms of the kind of cap space that they're going to have and the opportunities that they are going to have in free agency. So let's begin by talking about the performance of this Knicks team last season. And I'm going to keep this brief because I'm pretty sure we all know how it went not well. They had one of the worst offensive ratings in the league, one of the worst defensive ratings in the league, and one of the worst records in the league as well, just because of a really poorly constructed roster and a general lack of talent as well. However, in terms of the building blocks, there are a couple of players that I'm really excited about on this roster. For RJ Barrett, he had the kind of rookie season that you would probably expect given the situation and the roster in New York. Shooting efficiency was predictably an issue, as were the turnovers compared to the assists, but on one of the worst spacing teams in the league without a ton of other offensive options, that really isn't all that surprising for such a young player. But still, he has the size, length, and athleticism to be a really good player as a combo scorer / perimeter creator, and whether that happens in New York is kind of to be determined, but he's got as good of a chance as most other players would if they can put the right pieces around him, and that's why he was such a high draft pick last year, so I'm still very high on RJ Barrett. And then the other player that I really want to highlight and dig into his performance is Mitchell Robinson, and he absolutely made some improvements from his rookie season. And with him, I feel like we kind of have to start on the defensive end because he's known as a rim protector, and he got even better on that end this season despite his per game blocks being down. Team shot over 8% worse at the rim with Robinson on the floor than off this season, which is 96th percentile in the entire league, and up from just over 3% the year before per cleaning the glass. Now, there are still some times where Robinson chases a block and leaves the offensive rebound open on the other side, but he improved in that aspect from his rookie year, and he's still so young and is showing signs of a maturing team defender rather than just a stat-chasing shot blocker, aka Hassan Whiteside. And he continues to improve at defending without fouling as well. His foul percentage was just 5.5% this season, once again per cleaning the glass, which is still high, but down from 6.8% last season. And he still needs to improve in each of these areas, as well as ideally in his ability to defend the pick and roll without fouling and switching and staying in front of perimeter guys. But all the things that I mentioned earlier are good signs of improvement. Now, offensively, he continues to be a hyper-efficient big as well, shooting over 70% from the field this season and ranked in the 99th percentile in points per shot attempt as a rookie and this season. Now, he's never going to be an incredible offensive player, and no, I'm not buying into the videos of him working on his perimeter game that have been floating around social media, but this Tyson Chandler type archetype that he's growing into is incredibly valuable, especially if he can switch on to guards in the pick and roll, and if he continues to improve, he'll be a huge piece for the Knicks and earn himself a giant contract. Now, beyond that, I don't really know about the building blocks on this team. I think that Julius Randle is a great stats guy, but doesn't really drive winning, and he can't be your best player, certainly. And probably his ideal situation would be as a sixth man on a good team, but to me, he's more trade bait for New York right now than an actual building block for the future, as this team is definitely building towards that future rather than any kind of immediate success. And it's a similar situation for Bobby Portis, who they'll likely decline the large team option for this offseason anyway, making him a free agent. As for Frank Ntilikina, he continues to keep the hopes of his little fan club alive, but I still just don't see it. You can tell me all day long about how good the defense is, but when you're this bad of an offensive player, you simply can't be on the floor in the NBA. If he can't improve as a shooter, he won't be in the league for very much longer. As for Kevin Knox, I'm really not sure what happened to him this season. I thought he looked really good and confident in Summer League last year and to start his rookie season, but this year everything kind of dropped off a cliff. He has to have something significant to his game in order to earn more minutes, whether it be defense, shooting, or playmaking, and as of right now, he looks to just be on the path towards being a bust. And Dennis Smith Jr. has been a disappointment as well. He was a legit asset in that Kristaps Porzingis trade, but his struggles as a shooter and finishing at the rim have really stunted his development. And as a result, I really only see two building blocks on the Knicks roster right now, but they're two really good ones, and they have some opportunities to improve moving forward. They just need to get these guys minutes. It's really strange how they continue to give veterans minutes over the younger guys, and that on-floor development is key for their development moving forward, and hopefully going into next season they start to prioritize that a little bit more. As for the draft, the Knicks should still very much be in best player available mode. The only exception to that for me would be at the 5 spot, as Mitchell Robinson projects to be a really good starting 5 for a while, and bringing in another player with a similar skill set seems a bit redundant to me. Everything else though is fair game, with an emphasis on outside shooting. Even with the promise of Barrett, they need more perimeter scoring and playmaking, and the lack of shooting on the roster is really shocking. As long as the prospect can shoot and fits with Barrett and Robinson, they're a good pick for the Knicks, in my opinion. In terms of trades, there are some assets on this roster. Even struggling young players like Knox, Ntilikina, and DSJ could have value to the right teams. Plenty of teams are willing to take a flyer on guys like that, and if the Knicks can get some draft compensation in return, that would be a smart move in my opinion, as I don't see any of them as significant pieces for them moving forward, or they can just keep them around for a potential star trade down the road as well. But keep in mind that both Dennis Smith Jr. and Frank Ntilikina are going into contract seasons next year. However, as I briefly mentioned earlier, Randle is the biggest available trade piece on this roster. He has 2 big years left on his contract, but has plenty of value still as a front court scorer. Shipping him to a semi-contending team in need of scoring that can also limit his defensive issues by bringing him off the bench would likely get them some draft compensation in return, which will do them more good within this rebuild than Randle being on the floor would, in my opinion. With that said, if for some reason a big star did become available in the trade market this offseason, although I wouldn't recommend that the Knicks make a move for them considering how far away they are from competing with this roster even if they added a star, they've got the draft assets to make an intriguing offer, including a 2020 and 2021 Clippers first round pick, with 2021 being a pick swap, the Mavs first round pick in 2021, as well as 2023, although it is top 10 protected, and they have all of their own picks throughout those years, plus a couple of extra second round picks. But again, I wouldn't recommend that option in 2020 at least. Ultimately, however, unless the Knicks find their future franchise superstar in the draft this year, this is likely to be an incremental improvement type of offseason in the draft and trade categories rather than any kind of big leap. As we look towards free agency now, as well as the future for the Knicks, they're in a really good spot. Currently, they're projected at just under $100 million in payroll this offseason, which gives them about $15 million in cap space. However, Bobby Portis, Taj Gibson, and Wayne Ellington all have big team options that they're likely to decline, opening up another $33 million in cap space, bringing the total to almost $50 million, well within the coveted max contract territory. But as you probably know by now, though, not many big-time free agents are in this 2020 class, as most of them are in the 2021 class, which I'll talk about in a bit. The best option for this offseason, in my opinion, would be to take some swings on young restricted free agents and bring in as many veteran shooters as possible. Bringing back Mo Harkless on a fair deal wouldn't be a bad option. Joe Harris is a great shooter to open up space for the young guys. Davis Bertans, Myers Leonard, and Marvin Williams can do the same in the front court, and flyers on guys like Justin Holiday and Josh Jackson might be worth a look. For restricted free agents, Chris Dunn, Malik Beasley, and Juan Hernangomez could all be options as well, depending on the price. However, I would caution against overpaying any of these players. The goal right now should be to try to find value with 1 or 2 year contracts for guys like Jackson, Leonard, and even Pat Connaughton, rather than handing out big long-term deals to Bertans or Beasley. Ideally, the Knicks would bring in some floor spacers that allow them to see what they have in Barrett and Robinson a bit more clearly, with a halfway competent NBA roster around them, and allowing for them to continue to develop in a more winning, friendly environment as well, while maintaining future cap space. Which brings us now to the future projections. As of right now, without accounting for 2020 free agency or draft selections, the Knicks are projected to go in the summer of 2021 with just $44 million in payroll, giving them enough cap space to be well within the territory of 2 max contract slots. If for some reason they needed more and Randall is still on the roster, his contract is non-guaranteed for that offseason as well. And as an added bonus, both Barrett and Robinson will still be on their rookie contracts, so the Knicks can use up all of their cap space in the 2021 offseason and then go over the cap by re-signing those 2 guys and whoever they pick up in the 2020 draft, 2 extensions afterwards, and that is a great spot to be in. Despite the many missteps and mistakes along the way, the Knicks have stumbled into a pretty good situation for their future. It would have been nice for Kevin Knox, Dennis Smith Jr., and Frank Ntilikina to develop into usable NBA players, and this 2021 projection assumes that none of them are brought back to New York on new contracts. But this leaner rebuild of Barrett, Robinson, their 2020 draft pick, and tons of other draft picks and 2021 cap space is arguably better. They can attempt to take a big swing at a couple free agents in 2021, and they might as well try, but with how much things move around from year to year, it's hard to project right now how they might fare with the max contract guys by then, but either way they should be fine. If they manage to bring in 1 or 2 max guys in 2021, then great. If not, they might as well use the cap space that they have to put a handful of complementary players around their trio of young assets and see how good they can be, with the ability to move the pieces around later to raise their ceiling. And that would be the plan that I would recommend. Prioritize the development of Robinson, Barrett, and the 2020 draft guy. Use the 2020 cap space to build a semi-decent team around them with good shooting, ideally on 1-year deals. Keep that 2021 cap space open and make your big moves then. If a star becomes available via trade in the 2021 offseason or later, that would be the time to cash in the future draft capital that they have to really raise their ceiling. And honestly, that's a really good situation to be in, and I'm surprised by how well the Knicks are set up for the future. Now, obviously, a lot of this depends on the development of their younger players into more than just solid starters, and assumes that they won't screw it up along the way. But just from an on-paper perspective, the New York Knicks are actually in a really good spot moving forward. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.